Welcome to the International Institute for Facilitation's podcast, Spaghetti on the Wall. I'm Eileen Dowse, Chair Emeritus and Director of Assessment for INIFAC. And today I'm joined by Valérie Malisse. And she is an executive coach, a mentor, and she also does leadership development educational programs. So welcome, Valérie.
Welcome to all the people who are listening, and welcome to the two of us, Eileen.
The two of us, and one is in the United States and one is in Belgium. So yes, there we go. Well, today we're going to talk about facilitating a team experiencing trauma and crisis. Bit of a heavy topic. We're going to do our best to kind of lighten it up, make it real, and let the people listening learn if they're in that situation. I think the best place for us to start is with some definitions to really understand what is a crisis and what is a trauma and how are they different.
Yes, so the first thing is I even go before the crisis, what I call the tension. So in a team dynamic, there are tensions in the team life overall. And it happens because we have different needs, we have different personalities, and we have different priorities. So that tension is something that usually we should speak about, but sometimes we don't. But every single tension is something that's really helping us to learn and to grow how we can better work together.
Yes.
So that's the first one, which is, in fact, in your muscle. It's when you get back at the end of your day at home and you see some tensions that are in your body. Mm-hmm. But then suddenly, if you breathe, you rest a little bit, it's kind of your body is whispering you something such like, please care about me. Mm-hmm. We have to listen to those whispers, but sometimes we do not. And because we do not, but then we come to what we might call a crisis. So crisis is something that suddenly is breaking. It's happened most of the time suddenly, but it doesn't mean that it was not already built over time, over tensions after tensions. Mm. It's a conflict that is popping. It's a pain that is happening in the team. It's someone leaving, so an unexpected loss, for example, So the crisis really will be a rupture. It's really something that suddenly is breaking. And in your team, you will have a look to it's a conflict that is starting, that it's a painful event that is happening. It might be someone losing the team and it's creating something very difficult for the team to go through. So it's shaking the team. It's creating instability. It's creating confusion. Yeah. We can solve it over time because we will take the time to solve the crisis, but within the moment, you still go high on emotion. Yeah. And again, if I get back to our body, for example, it's no longer your muscles that are tired at the end of the day, is that suddenly you get a more kind of an alarm signal where sickness might come and you have just to recover. Mm-hmm. And you are taking that time for 1, 2, or 3 days to just rest and really recover it. So crisis is a stronger signal that probably some tensions haven't been addressed in the past. Trauma, yeah?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, trauma, it's not about what happened. Tensions and crisis is much more what happened. Trauma is much more around, even if that is happening, are we able to get over? Yeah. And again, it's starting from what we might call a new blank sheet of paper. Yeah. And the fact that even if we have addressed what was the crisis or what was the tension, the fact that we are not able to absorb it or integrate it, that's where the trauma starts.
Beautiful.
And it's that level, it's no longer about what happened, it's about all the emotional element that we have to deal with. And if we don't put any clarity or voice or space on that element, then it takes over time.
Wonderful.
And in your body, it's what might happen, because if you have through a time crisis on one element, or one muscle. At one point of time, it's no longer your muscle that is creating pain, but it's yourself not daring to do some movement because you already know that it might create pain.
Here's what I'm hearing you say, that crisis is really an event that happened, and that trauma is the response to that event. For me, one of the things that I find with facilitators is sometimes facilitators want to avoid that point of crisis and are afraid of trauma for good reason. Yet, in times, a team, a group, needs a moment of that, managed well, resolved well, to get to the next level.
Because if you don't, it remains below the surface.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
so the challenge when we are facilitating in a team or whatever is the group dynamic we are doing, if we don't name it, then below the surface, something is still bubbling.
Right. Yep.
And that element is something that if we don't address or if we don't name it, then it will continue to take a little bit more space into it. But the more it takes space, the more it's difficult to speak about it.
Yes.
And the more it's difficult to speak about it, the more it becomes into bracket, if I use the provocative word, it's becoming toxic.
Yes.
Between what I'm feeling inside of me and what is the external perceptions we are giving into that.
Absolutely.
So,
and in the facilitation world, we call that dysfunction. And for me, I always say people behave for very good reasons. We just don't understand what they are. And if someone is being dysfunctional, then find out why.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the spirit of definitions, I have two more for you. And one, if we're talking about crisis, one is around crisis management versus crisis facilitation. So someone who's facilitating crisis, are they also managing crisis? What do you think about that?
So for me, there are two aspects into it. Crisis management is what I call the reactive mode. How do we solve what's going on? So getting back to my muscle that is a little bit more in injury, is what are the kind of medics I have to take to make sure that the pain is really decreasing and disappearing, and that what are the actions that I have to take to solve it. So it's much more around how am I able to get back to something that is normally functioning.
Right.
And that's really what I call the management piece of it, is what needs to happen in terms of processes to make sure that we are getting back on track, into brackets. When you are going to crisis facilitation, the point is no longer about the fact itself. For me, it's much more about what is the relation and the story that we have set up behind what was going in, and how do we make sure that we are talking about what and how we feel. So crisis facilitation is much more around holding the space to make sure we put the words on what is sometimes not speakable or seems to be not speakable. So a few questions that you might want to ask is, what's happening to us as the individual or as human during that crisis or during that tension?
Right.
What are my feelings? What am I feeling okay with? What are the elements I'm still struggling with?
Right.
And then another question might be, what do you need individually and what the team needs collectively to feel good again? So the point is, we are more on the feeling aspect and the relational aspect than really on the event and its content. And for me, that's where the big difference is.
I completely agree. And from in effects terms and our competencies, one of the things that is very important for a facilitator to do is to not only make contact with the client or sponsor, whatever name you want to use, and say what is occurring with this team so that you can do crisis facilitation if necessary, Maybe you didn't know you were about to. And then the other piece is to check in the moment with the team, because sometimes the client has no idea this is what's happening
No.
with the team. So you have to check twice, and then you have to have a whole lot of tools in order to manage that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so from your point, what I heard as well is trauma is very subjective. So for one
Yes.
person, it can be very traumatic.
Beautiful.
For another person, it's kind of nothing. So
Yeah.
even in a team where you feel the dysfunction, when you see those elements, for some people, that's really, really the traumatic aspect.
Yeah.
For some others, into bracket, they don't care and they don't mind. So the
Absolutely.
point is facilitating that element when we do not see the world the same way is really what needs to happen in the facilitation.
Absolutely. I can't tell you the number of senior managers I have spoken to who have said to me the team shouldn't feel that way. Okay, they do. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Right?
So one best example I have is there was a big reorganization in a company, and in fact they laid off one of the previous manager. And to be honest, they laid off because of the toxicity of that manager, but it created trauma in the team. And when the new one manager was coming, so crisis management, we laid off one person, we put another person into it. It's solved per se. But the fact that that new person wasn't aware about the whole story behind doesn't solve anything in the team dynamic.
Right.
And if you don't create that space at that moment to speak about that story that probably that leader wasn't aware of,
Yeah.
into bracket, has no clue
Right.
about what is the kind of emotional impact that it has created,
Yes.
he might decide to say, that's the past, we do not care anymore, we have to build the future. But if you do not care, then you continue to have that trauma bubbling below the surface.
It goes
And the
back to
team will
that.
never get back.
Yeah. It goes back. Sorry, I interrupted you. It goes
Yeah.
back to that amygdala, that fight and flight. Facilitators have to know about that and react, because deal with, manage that. And there is my next question. Let's say that facilitator is now, they've talked to the sponsor, either the or client, they've said there's trauma or they haven't said there's trauma, and now you get with the group and you're
Yeah.
in there facilitating and you are well aware that there is trauma. What are some of the skills, tools, things that a facilitator can do to help work through that with the team? And I choose that word very carefully, work through, because I believe that's what you have to do, not
Yeah.
to park it. And sometimes I
No.
guess you park it because if it's one person that's just had a death in the family, you can park it or remove that person, even,
Yeah.
or other people care that there's a death in the family or a death on the team, right?
Yeah.
So what can you do?
So I always practice three things. The first one is, how do I create the safety environment? So for me, psychological safety. And as a facilitator, there are a few things that I can bring to really create that safety space at the beginning. So it's how you set up your, what I call in my work, the ground rules. How do I clearly articulate what will be the process and the agenda? And also telling them that if something important emerges, I can screw up the agenda. So there are that time and space to make things
Right.
happening. It's also how you create the behaviors that you, into brackets, allow people to have. So it's okay for you to leave the room. It's becoming too painful for you. It's okay for you not to speak if you don't want to speak. You might also say, I want to pass, and that's okay. So it's what are the conditions for that psychological safety to be there. And really, the only thing as facilitator is to hold that space. We cannot force it. We cannot impose it. We can hold it, but naming the ground rules is really key because it gives the permission to people. So that's first one. How do I create some safety? Therefore, I also have to check my own safety. Am I calm enough? Am I grounded myself?
Right.
Is that trauma not something that I am biased with because I have been through that kind of stuff? So probably I know what the recipe might be. That's not what we are aimed to do. So it's really self-awareness and team awareness on the safety piece. Then the second element is how do I create the ability for people to speak or to express? And that's where you have to have in your bucket, I would say, practical tools, because not everyone wants to speak.
Yes.
But you can also do ways of articulating that is differently than just your voice. So journaling might be one element. Checking but anonymously. So it's kind of everybody is looking backwards and everyone is going one by one, but we don't see who is saying what or who is putting his or own level where.
Yeah.
And then one that is, I think that has been my toughest element, silence.
Oh, yes.
Is one of the expression. And we have to really watch that one off because that's really important too. So silent is a kind of expression.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the last piece is to really create that space is how do we give people the choice to be or not be, participate or not participate, asking them, do you want we tackle it now or do we put it for later? So how do we give them back the accountability and the choice that they want to do and not the choice that as a facilitator we would prefer to have?
Valerie, I want to add a couple more to that creating space. And absolutely on silence. And wow, that's a very, if you can capture that gift, it's amazing, because too long, it becomes bad. Too short, it's not enough silence. So understanding that sweet spot of silence is great. The other thing is when you have introverts or those that need to analyze and think in their heads more, that journaling or that time for self thinking or writing down. It doesn't necessarily mean write a journal about all your pain and suffering. It just means rather than having a talking activity, we're going to have you quietly write down your thoughts and then to present. And the other piece that I would add to your bucket would be breakout groups. Because when someone, if it's just one person in the team, creating that space might just be a breakout group that they have just a couple of people in that group rather than a large group that can be very overwhelming. So in addition, what I'd also say to your list is I think it's very important for a facilitator to establish their role. I'm an organizational psychologist. If there's trauma in the group and it's above my pay grade, I will be very clear that I am not managing this. So I think it's important to set the role to say, I'm here to hold the space. I'm here to help you communicate. I'm here to get to that outcome. And if things become difficult or unmanageable, we need to take a break and do a check-in. What are your thoughts on
definitely.
that one?
So I do believe the challenge in those kind of situations is first to be self-aligned and self-grounded.
Right.
Where are my limits? Where are my boundaries? What's the position I'm taking? Am I playing kind of the rescuer here? Or because if I go to rescuer, that's not the right position to have.
Exactly.
Am I really taking distance because it's a kind of a reminder of a specific one I was struggling when I was working? That's not a right position too. So my point is, what am I playing currently here? Am I really just there to hold the space, or am I already playing another role into that? And putting that boundaries, knowing what I am there for and what I will not do. Being able to say, for that specific element, I will refer to someone who is more a therapist than I am because it's too deep for me. That's the kind of stuff you have. Or I would say, I would recommend that you have. And the second piece for me in that element is also supervision might help a lot. Before, how are you preparing it?
Yeah.
And also after, meaning how are you debriefing it? That's peer support doesn't need to be 2 hours, but those 20 minutes about what and how am I grounded to get into it. And then at the end, that checking about was really that element the right one, and how do I feel afterwards is probably something I would recommend to do as well.
Right. And it's that as facilitators, we need to do some personal and professional development always. And my children always laugh at me because my big line is when something happens, I always say, "What did you learn?" That's my first go-to. What did you learn? If something happens in the group, what did you learn?
Yeah.
And the same thing for myself.
That's the most powerful questions into that. And also one element that was popping is sometimes as a facilitator, you might accept to let go of control. Because with trauma, you never know what might happen, what might be the conversation. So even if you have your script at the beginning or your process, be comfortable with letting go the process if it's on the benefit for the team perspective.
And I would add, be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'm in a facilitation and people are talking and there is trauma and they're speaking, and half of my brain is, oh my word, what am I going to do? How am I going to manage this? I just want to run out the door. And yet you stay in the moment. So that goes back to beware of your self-awareness because you are going to be feeling things too.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about de-escalation because we've talked about trauma, crisis. We've got that event and the trauma, how people are feeling. And now in facilitation, you go in to help a group achieve their end result, and trauma is, blocking the road. That children's song, you can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go around it, you got to go through it. How do you de-escalate, maybe resolve, maybe? How do you get through it to help the group start working better together?
So my first point is, if it's not named by the group, I name what I am observing. So the point is, here is where we are. This is what I am observing. This is the story I'm having in my head. Is that story right or wrong? And if that story is right, then how do you feel about the story? And I'm getting back to the emotional element because I need to understand if what I am naming is what you are also feeling or observing on your side, then what is creating inside you versus what is creating inside me. And then the next piece might be when we all name it and we understand each other's perspective on it, because that's where you have to make good use of time that everybody, in a way or another, is articulating it. Find a way. Some will go through, as we said, expressing through the voice. Some others might be in breakout. Some might be in journaling. Some might be in drawings. Doesn't matter. My point is that's the situation. And from that situation, then we can start projecting ourselves. What would be the first next situation we want to have? We don't want to go to the sun directly. But how do we make sure that it's less dark than what it is currently? So what do we want to have in the next 3 months, for example? And one single step. And then from those elements is what can we commit individually and collectively to get to that level.
Exactly.
But it's what I call the dropping element of it. It's drop by drop, it's step by step. And it's not about we now clean it such like a clean sheet and we restart from scratch. We have to take the time to get out of the shit instead of thinking that we can throw the shit and restart from a blank sheet of paper. That's not the way you can do with trauma.
Yeah. And I'm not so much about throwing the shit, it's more about throwing that spaghetti on the wall. So we'll get that spaghetti going. We'll throw that instead. It's much more fun.
And it's not it's a nicer picture as well.
It's a nicer picture, you're right. Thank you. Thank you for that. And in my world, what you were just talking about is solution focused problem solving. So absolutely. We need to wrap up, unfortunately. And speaking of throwing things against the wall and spaghetti on the wall, I noticed that you have a bit of an accent from Belgium, speaking French. Thank you for your English. How would you say spaghetti on the wall in French?
Spaghetti au mur.
Spaghetti au mur. All right, we're going to have to create a new graphic of all the different languages. So, Valérie, I want to thank you so much for your time, for your insights, sharing your knowledge, and is it appropriate to say, may your life be filled with successful trauma resolution? I don't even know what to say.
I think I am taking it because I think the biggest answer to trauma is love. And I do believe that whatever we do, if we put love as the biggest ingredient, then life is beautiful.
My goodness, you're speaking to my heart. Thank you so much, Valérie.
Thanks too.